Welcome to MJ Hobby Corner. I will be your host in this video, and in this video what we're going to do is a little show and tell. I realized that our 4-year anniversary has come up towards the end of September, actually. And I decided, you know what, we're going to do a little bit of anniversary talk. We're going to have some videos that will be companion videos to Scratch Builder Monthly, and Scratch Builder Monthly will have sections of it that go back in time into some of these scratch builds that I've built, and I'll have articles on those things and add a little bit of, you know, how difficult they were to build, how easy they were to build, etc., etc. So thank you very much for joining me, and let's get to the tabletop. I'm going to go over the groups of vehicles that I've made according to the different materials they're made from, and just very briefly outline some of the materials that I use, the tools, and how quickly these things build. The first one is going to be cardboard. So the first collection of tanks is cardboard. Now these are made with either serial cardboard or very thin corrugated cardboard. These were all done by hand, no computer templates. And I think that in the future these would definitely benefit from more computer generated templates to make things a little straighter, a little nicer. But these are not bad. And I mean, the crafter, it's up to the crafter's discretion how much detail they add, how simple these are. This one, for example, was a half-hour build. It represents a steam tank, very World War I-ish. And one of the traits in my previous builds is the use of corrugated cardboard as tracks. That is still something I do very often, and it's a very good way of representing tracks, especially in these early types of vehicles. Now, another thing I tried, and this was an experimental system here, is to make bogies or road wheels out of rolled up pieces of cardboard, and I didn't really like that, so I discontinued the use of that. But it is an option if the crafter likes it, and roll up little pieces of a card and make your wheels that way. I mean, if you're looking for quick builds, that is definitely one way to go. Another trait here is the use of old cable ties, and cut them up, and then basically use them as air vents in your tanks, and that works very well depending on the scale that you're doing too. But all of these tanks also include other materials like straw pieces for the steam tanks, for the smokestacks. We have little barbecue sticks. We have fluoro wire and 20 gauge wire that we get at Walmart, little bits of clay in some cases. So I do mix my materials a lot to make up for the things that cardboard can't do. This is a model that I didn't really like very much, but it's still in my collection. It has good detail, and it's a good example of what you can do with the detail, and this is all cardboard. These things here were bought at Walmart. They are still in use. One of the most difficult things to replicate in all tanks are the wheels and you know, wheel structure. So I use these to some good effect. Those can be purchased at Walmart. And we also have these things, which are not 100% round, but they're not too bad. I mean, I use these a lot, and you really can't tell. You'll see them in the new tanks, and they're good for wheel structures. Now, these were old top-downs, and these were also built with cardboard, combination of cardboard and clay. Now, these don't look good when you look at them from the side, but that's because these are more for like hex wargaming, and these are built very, very rapidly. These only take you know, like maybe a half hour per tank, if not less, once you start getting good at it. you make them in less and less time. And these are made with a concept I called layering, which I actually began on the computer many years ago. These were done freehand. Now, I would say cardboard is a great beginner material for beginning crafters. It's readily available. You can get it in different thicknesses. It's recyclable, so it's great material that way. It's easily tooled. You can use scissors. I use scissors sometimes, fine, sharp scissors for depending on the cardboard, and also, of course, your X-Acto blade. It takes to almost any adhesive. You can use super glue, hot glue, white glue. Of course, super glue and more so hot glue is a little more unforgiving because if you make a mistake joining something, you have very little time to shift it around and stuff. So I like using white glue, white tacky glue, like this stuff is excellent. And it takes a little bit of time for it to stick together. You can use pins to kind of hold your seams together, but it works very well. So cardboard, excellent beginner material. Now the next series of vehicles we're going to look at are made from foam. Now foam, the foam that I use is recycled foam from these old produce trays. They're washed, they're dried, and I only like to use recycled foam. That's just me. If I could save myself purchasing foam and just working with this stuff, that's what I do. I always prefer recycled materials over anything else. But that's my style of crafting. So all these vehicles were made with that kind of foam, and for anyone that's been with the channel for a long time, you know that I've built a lot of different things out of foam, including my starships. We'll talk about that in another video. I still use foam for construction. In fact, I'm considering foam for some airships that I'm building for my miniature fleets. But let's look very quickly at these tanks. Most of these vehicles have had some videos in the past. Here is my World War I foam collection, which I didn't continue. They were discontinued some time ago. But basically with foam, one of the things that I do is I use a number 2 pencil or a very sharp tipped pencil, and that's how I score in all the details. In addition to that, I use a combination of wire and barbecue sticks. Here we have the familiar corrugated cardboard for the tracks, and basically that's how I make the vehicles. Now the disadvantage is when you're working with foam, you have to be very careful I usually use like a ruler or something to try to get these lines as straight as you can when you're scoring, because then things start to get a little bit messy. The other disadvantage to foam is that vehicles often come out a bit fuzzy. Now, someone had recommended to use a hair dryer, and that works well, actually. It works very good. So anyone working with foam, I do recommend that. It's not perfect, but it works well. To really basically sculpture with it. The primary materials for working with foam, you're going to definitely need an X-Acto blade, a very sharp one. I use scissors for some items. The primary adhesive would be hot glue, in addition to some white glue as well. But now foam reminds me of clay in some respects, and you might think that they're very different materials, and yes, they are. But in the sense that with foam, you're actually sculpting, you're carving and sculpting. You're going to be using mostly this material, your sanders and files. You can use cheap cuticle files. I use them. They're excellent. You can actually make them thinner by cutting them up. I also have a number of little filing sticks for finer shaping. But basically, a lot of your shaping with foam is going to be done with the file. And then, of course, you're going to want to treat it a little bit with a little heat to reduce some of the fuzziness. I also found that using a tiny bit of water, just a little spritz of water on the foam, then filing it helps in that sort of fuzzy respect as well. Now, one thing is I would wear a mask or just be careful because foam does generate a lot of powder, and I don't know how light that powder is, or whether you inhale it or not. So I usually wear simple mask will do, just to be sure that I'm not inhaling any fine dusts or something. It is important to keep all these safety precautions in mind. But foam is a good material. Maybe not for a beginner crafter, but certainly, once you've worked with cardboard a little bit, you want to try foam. It's definitely a good material to work with, for sure. Okay, so putting the plane aside and the little vehicle, here are some of the mesh construction that I have made recently. And these are within like last year, beginning last year, these vehicles were made, and they're made completely out of canvas mesh. Now, I do have videos on how I made these. Not all of these, but primarily the big one there. And it's all the same technique except reduced to smaller scale for these smaller vehicles. Now, these have moving parts, including the weapon, which moves up or down. And that's not a very hard thing to do because of the little peg-like properties of mesh. If you get September's issue of Scratch Builder Monthly, I talk about that, and I use that in the monorail that I made as well. Here is one that's never been painted, and it has like the double barrels. This one has a little bit of movement upward as well, so it can be used as an anti-aircraft vehicle. And then these are the larger vehicles. Like I said, I went over this. In fact, I do have a Scratch Builder issue dedicated to these vehicles. So mesh can be a very good building material, and these took about 4 hours just to do the hull. I don't remember exactly. I would have to look back at my notes to see the exact time. They didn't take very long. However, for mass producing them, that would be a much lengthier process. And of course, I painted these with airbrush. So the skin on these things are made with index card. So I have a whole video on how I made those tanks. And I mean, it works. It's a good building material for a few vehicles, if I want to build a few vehicles to fill in the gaps. Now, canvas mesh is a very good material to work with. It's inexpensive. This is a pack of 6 for a little over $3 at Walmart in the craft section. Mainly where all the sewing material is, because this is used with yarn. People make some awesome like things with this mesh, and we can use it in the studio to really work on a wide variety of different things. It can be used in sci-fi terrain. It can be used in just a bunch of different things. I even make little army soldiers with that mesh. So it's a good material in that it's easy to tool. You can cut it with scissors. I use sharp scissors to cut. You can also use your X-Acto knife as well. And one of the cool things is that you don't really have to measure. I mean, it's a grid. So you can work, your measurements can be based on the grid. And I came up with a little formula. So like if I want a vehicle that's, 10 long and 6 wide, I just count the little squares and measure them up. Another good property of this mesh is, depending on how you cut it, you can make little pegs, which then fit into the squares of another piece of mesh. It is important to mention, however, that they're not exactly even. So it works in certain situations, but not in others, okay? But it is an important property of mesh. Mesh can also be layered, sandwiched in different shapes and layers to create different geometry for the purposes of building vehicles or starships, which I've built some starships. When we do our starship segment, we'll see the mesh starships, all right? So okay, so here are the paper models. And here are the new ones. I only have 2 represented here. That will probably be growing very soon. And these are the old ones. I mean, these are in, it's got to be over 10 years, to be honest. These were done on Microsoft Paint. Here is some kind of giant fortress-like vehicle, something like you may see in Robotech or something like that. It has these moving pieces down here. They come out, okay, and that's what stabilizes the giant rail gun that it has on top. And this was done with like 3 sheets of parts, okay. So this is a true paper model, unlike the newer ones that we're going to look at. I don't consider those true paper models, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Was a time when I was really exploring the use of paper models in my war games. Now, these were built with roughly 15 millimeters in mind. Okay, and here's my little 15 millimeter Peter Pig German soldier. Okay, shows what you can do with paper models. This is a tank that I used 40K inspiration for this one, and this was the only full color paper model that I ever made. I always make my paper templates in black and white because it saves ink. Now, these are the new paper models, and if you've been with the channel for a while, you've seen these are very new. And boy, it's already going to be... I'm sorry, this one was built early this year, not last year. And this was built with the template method, and then the template's a very simple black and white template, and then all the other details are added after. Like here we have some wood that I carved up to represent the branches. Here's the fiber tape. This is a new way to make my tracks in this scale. And here we have my 15 millimeter German soldier. We can use a British soldier as well. Okay. And so basically that's what I would use with these vehicles. And here is the newer one. And this is a fictitious heavy tank based on the T2. That was an American vehicle for World War I. However, of course, I exaggerated the scale a little bit and turned it into a heavy tank for those fictitious games. Now, this uses a magnet for a turret, okay? That was the easiest thing for me to do. These early turrets were very cylindrical, and so I chose the button magnets because I have a bunch of them, and it worked very well for this kind of turret. There is a hatch built with some mesh, plastic mesh, 2 little squares of mesh, and you'll probably see that in October Scratch Builder. I do have all the parts, how I folded them and all that stuff. The muffler is inside there, and it's represented by a little wire and then a little cap of a glass bead. These are glass seed beads that I use, and that gave me the little muffler detail there. So there you go. That covers all the tanks and the new method that I'm going to be developing a lot more. You will see issues of Scratch Builder Monthly dedicated to this kind of building method, okay? And you're going to see how I actually make that tank and future tanks as well. I'll have some companion videos as well to highlight some of the areas of the builds that are most interesting. All right, so this one's a tricky one. Now, the primary tools is sandpaper, and of course your craft pins. I take them apart. I save the little metallic piece that goes in between that holds the clothespin together, because I do use that in some of these crafts. Wire cutters are very important. I even use the wire cutters sometimes for cutting the clothespins in some of the notched areas. You will need some kind of a simple saw, like a little coping saw or something like that. A saw is very, very useful for this kind of craft. X-Acto knife, because you can carve the wood a little bit. Tweezers for very small parts, and pliers for bending wire, and also for handling some of the wood components. Now, these are essentially wooden vehicles. And this was a tricky one. This is a Sherman-like vehicle. Of course, it's not 100% accurate. These are fictitious, like alternate history vehicles. And basically, getting the shape of the Sherman, I had to use this part of the clothespin and then really work on it with the sander to get the shapes that I wanted. Now, these vehicles also use wooden beads. These round turrets are wooden beads, and so wooden beads really help. You can get other kinds of wood shapes. I used a variety of craft woods, including those little lollipop sticks or whatever you call them, those craft wood pieces. Those are very helpful. And clay, Procreate clay or green stuff to fill in some of the areas of, that need different detail. Tin from tin cans, like from old Sprite cans, in order to make the mud guards and some of the detail plating on the vehicle itself. So this is some kind of artillery vehicle. And then the tank, which again is something like an M60 tank, right? This has moving parts. And so it is possible with these clothespins, these things, these mud guards were tin as well. So combining the clothespins with other materials, you can really come up with a lot of different combinations. And one of the things that clothespins help me to do is to make actual walkers. And so the walkers themselves have like wire legs. I would make these today out of paperclip wire, which is very strong, and then use a little bit of clay for some of the other details. Some people who work with Procreate or green stuff, you already have that in your toolbox. And so, yeah, if you have that stuff already, then why not, give it a try. It's a very cool material to work with. Clothespins are one of those oddball materials. I would say that it's a little more advanced in the sense that with your tools, you're going to need your sanding tools. A Dremel is very useful, and I have a lot of little filing tools for my Dremel, a lot of little filing bits. They help a lot. You can edge with the Dremel and carve in details. And its X-Acto knife is very useful, taking away certain corners or rounding corners and then filing. So you're going to need a little bit more tooling with the clothespins, and especially cutting them. A simple saw with fine teeth would work great for cutting. I even use my heavy wire clippers sometimes to cut smaller bits of clothespins. And then you need multiple sizes of clothespins. Now, they're readily available at craft sections of Walmart, and even the Dollar Tree sells them here in the US. So they're very inexpensive. So they are an inexpensive material to work with. And but it is a tricky one. And now for adhesives, super glues, a combination of super glue and white glue, and even a little bit of hot glue works well. And there are other adhesives that you could definitely experiment with. Wood glue would work very well instead of the white glue, but it's a little more expensive. Here is a measurement for this tank. I mean, scales are important, and I will be adding, I do add ruler measurements and stuff in my Scratch Builder articles, so you will see that there, but I'll be adding more and more of that because scale is obviously very important. So here are my little 172 scale American soldiers, and the tanks that we see here. This is basically the little scale of the soldiers with the tank. If I were playing a World War I game, a 172 scale would definitely be best for this tank, since these vehicles were smaller. And here is the APC. Okay, so these were built with 172 scale in mind. Now, if I wanted to make this a much larger tank, like a fortress tank, I can use 15 millimeter, and these are my Peter Pig figures, and these are 15 millimeter. And then, of course, for 10 millimeter drop zone commander figures, my 10 millimeter tank right here. Okay, so that's basically, in terms of size class, that's what I'm looking at. Okay, so I've built in different scales depending on what I want to play. You know, I have a variety of different vehicles in those scales. Okay, folks, well, there it is. And basically, I will continue to experiment. This computer assisted process of building things is very helpful. I'm going to make actual templates, which will just be templates that you can use on cardboard. I will make these things available in Scratch Builder Monthly, and also as pay what you want little documents on Wargames Vault. So if you don't want to pay, you don't have to. You can get it for free, and this way you can try it out. And if you want to help the channel, then you can go back and purchase a few issues of Scratch Builder Monthly. That definitely helps the channel a lot, and it helps my work here. You can also join our Patreon, and patrons do get a copy of the magazine and anything digital that I make, including my War Games narrative documents, which is basically homebrew narrative for a bunch of different things. Okay, that's something I work on periodically. Those documents take a lot of work, especially the narrative documents. They take a lot of work. But be as it may, I'm going to continue to work on these things. You're going to see periodic videos from now to the holidays. Basically, New Year's will be our last video, and these will be periodic. We're going to go over all of the things that I've built. Well, not all of them, because I have built quite a few things. We're going to summarize everything at the very end, include terrain in that, and that video is going to be a very special MJ Hobby Talk with Julie. We're going to talk about all these things I've built. And right now we're going into models. So in the next video, we'll look at starships, and I may actually have to have 2 videos because I built quite a few starships over the years. Okay, so a lot of this stuff is stuff I built with the channel in the past 4 years. Some stuff goes well beyond that. Some things were built many years before the channel was even created, and before my health issues as well. So only scratching the surface here. There's a lot to go over, guys. So anyone interested in scratch building or using your scratch builds in war games, or even displays, they don't have to be wargaming pieces. They could be display pieces, just something you build for the fun of it, right? So, all right, folks, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much, and I hope you like this little show and tell. And the magazine's going to reflect the anniversary. It's going to go back, and you're going to see a lot of these things, and then the videos will be companions to the magazine. All right, so have a great one, and enjoy your scratch building. Enjoy your wargaming. Stay safe.